Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're exploring how a virtual city made entirely of predictable code somehow became ground zero for modern legends and massive digital cults. We're taking a deep dive into Grand Theft Auto to figure out how a game famous for its hyper-violent, over-the-top satire actually sparked entirely new forms of human belief and internet-age mythology. It's a really wild ride, so let's get into it.
Okay, let's just address the elephant in the room and dive right into this fascinating contradiction at the heart of our online lives. Think about it. Video games are digital artifacts. They are governed completely by code. Literally nothing can exist or happen in a game unless it's mathematically allowed by the parameters set by the developers. It is a completely knowable, strict, rule-based universe. Yet, despite knowing this, players constantly, obsessively search for unexplainable, supernatural anomalies hidden within these rigid systems. So why exactly do we do that?
Well, here's our roadmap for today's explainer to answer that. We'll kick things off with the cults of Los Santos and the infamous Epsilon program scam. Then, we'll move into hunting for digital myths, look at the strange phenomenon of virtual legend tripping, examine how players are testing the game's limits, and finally, wrap up with how developers are actually commodifying this digital belief.
Starting off with Section 1, Cults of Los Santos, a satirical sandbox. As you probably know, GTA's massive virtual cities are intentionally designed as these hyper-violent, satirical versions of America where players are handed the keys and told they can go anywhere and do absolutely anything. But hidden right there inside that chaotic sandbox is a very intentional developer-made cult. Let's move to Section 2, the Epsilon program scam, manufactured enlightenment.
Now, what's truly amazing about this is the sheer mind-numbing absurdity of the ritualistic tasks Rockstar Games actually forces players to do just to achieve some fake spiritual enlightenment. To unlock the Kifflom achievement in Grand Theft Auto V, you have to submit to this series of escalating, totally ridiculous challenges set by a celebrity-backed, in-game cult called the Epsilon program. You're not just throwing $5,000 and then $10,000 of your fake cash at them. You have to track down and steal specific luxury cars, buy these incredibly overpriced robes for 25 grand, and then literally wear them for 10 straight in-game days.
And the whole ordeal culminates in the number 5, because you literally have to run 5 miles through the virtual desert. It is a task so incredibly tedious that players routinely resort to cheating. They'll tie a rubber band to their controller to weigh down the run button and just walk away to make a sandwich. And all this effort is done just to ultimately hand over $50,000 to the cult's completely fictional founder, Chris Formage. It is a brilliantly constructed, highly interactive satire of a real-world scam, and players just willingly go along with it.
Which brings us to Section 3, Hunting for Digital Myths, when players make the lore.
So while the Epsilon program is a literal hard-coded scam that players willingly endure, the real mystery kicks off when those exact same players start finding unprogrammed ghosts in the machine. Gamers who are obsessively searching for hidden, completely unverified Easter eggs like Bigfoot or the Rat Man are actually participating in what academics call hyper-modern folklore. This happens when our digital spaces essentially become the modern campfire. You're not just playing a game anymore, you're sharing legends of a chainsaw killer or a mysterious ghost on online forums and wikis. And thanks to internet culture, these digital myths spread like wildfire.
And this perfectly illustrates a massive divide between a program joke dictated by the developers and an organic, emergent, player-driven belief system. On one hand, you've got developer-made myths. These are your scripted jokes, your verified Easter eggs, that whole Epsilon program scam. We know they exist. But on the flip side, you have player-made myths. These are ontologically ambiguous. That's just a fancy way of saying nobody actually knows for sure if they exist in the game's code, or if they're just hoaxes cooked up by other players. Like, does Bigfoot actually roam the woods of San Andreas, or is it just a PC mod? This ambiguity causes players to split into factions, endlessly debating whether these creatures are real or totally fake.
Let's look at how they hunt for them in Section 4, Virtual Legend Tripping, Rituals in the Code.
To track down these player-made myths, gamers engage in what researchers call ostension. Basically, that means acting out a supernatural legend in real life, sort of like going to visit a local haunted house. Scholar Michael Kinsella actually outlines 4 specific steps to a legend trip, mapping exactly how a digital myth hunter operates. First, there's initiation. Say, seeing a grainy, spooky YouTube video of the GTA Goat Man. Second is travel, booting up the game and driving to those specific virtual coordinates. Third is the encounter, hoping to witness the supernatural event yourself. And finally, integration,
grabbing your screenshots and rushing straight back to Reddit to debate your findings with the community. Now notice the thematic parallels here. Just like wandering the desert in those ridiculous Epsilon robes, players meticulously execute these incredibly obsessive, self-imposed rituals just hoping to witness the impossible. They literally bring in-game cameras to manipulate the way the game engine spawns entities just outside their field of view. They equip thermal goggles to spot heat signatures in pitch-black forests. Some even recruit non-playable characters to act as physical bait, just waiting to see if a cryptid will pop out and attack them. They're snapping photos blindly to catch invisible threats. It is a highly structured, almost religious ritual performed entirely inside a simulated world. Let's unpack the psychology behind that in Section 5, Testing the Game's Limits, Code versus Belief. Have you ever fallen down one of these internet rabbit holes and just wondered, why do we look for glitches in the matrix when we absolutely know a video game is ultimately just a bunch of programmed rules? Well, game scholar Ian Bogost calls this feeling simulation fever. It strikes us when the spooky, natural unpredictability of the real world seems to unexpectedly seep into the rigid, completely exclusionary code of the game. Usually a game behaves exactly as expected, but when players see something that just shouldn't be there, like a driverless ghost car slowly rolling down a hill or a mysterious shadow, it shatters that predictability. It creates this profound, jarring uneasiness because the randomness of reality feels like it's bleeding right into the digital space. And this deep underlying tension between encoded reality and human belief causes some fierce debates online. It's perfectly captured by this amazing quote from a highly skeptical data miner on the GTA wiki. This user is arguing purely from the absolute verifiable truth of the code, hey, if the image file, the actual texture, isn't physically sitting in the game's directory, then the monster absolutely cannot exist. End of story, right? Yet despite this unshakable, mathematically sound logic, the belief just stubbornly persists. Other players completely ignore the code and continue to hunt, driven by the thrilling, undeniable possibility that the game is hiding unexplainable secrets from them.
Which leads us to our final point in Section 6, Commodifying Digital Belief, the ultimate Easter egg.
You see, eventually, the developers at Rockstar noticed this immense, incredibly passionate, player-driven culture of myth hunting, and they quietly decided to co-opt it. By intentionally leaving these myths ambiguous, they effectively turned their virtual cities into massive hubs for what academics call belief tourism. In belief tourism, it actually doesn't matter if the player ever finds Bigfoot. What matters is the thrilling potential of the encounter. Because as long as Rockstar doesn't definitively debunk the rumors, players will keep logging into GTA Online. They keep exploring, they keep hoping, and most importantly, they stay highly engaged with the game's ecosystem as active consumers.
Look at how this played out over time. We can trace how a rumor born all the way back from the infamous 2004 hot coffee scandal, which actually proved to players that developers were indeed hiding secret files in the game, evolved. It sparked the mid-2000s Bigfoot rumors. Fast forward to 2013, and you have the massive Mount Chiliad mystery, where thousands of Reddit users spent years deciphering cryptic murals just trying to find a legendary jetpack. And then, boom. In 2018, Rockstar directly monetized the hype. They literally added a purchasable jetpack to GTA Online, officially transforming a hypermodern folk legend into a digital commodity. They sold the myth back to the players. So it leaves us with this really fascinating, provocative question about hypermodern folklore. Players are so incredibly quick to laugh at the fictional Epsilon program. They know it's a program scam designed to waste their time. Yet, those exact same players will happily, voluntarily, wander digital forests for hundreds of hours, executing bizarre self-imposed rituals, just hoping the code contains a sliver of real magic. It really makes you wonder, who is actually running the simulation here? Was the real cult the one the players created all along? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning what you see out there, both in the real world and especially in the digital one.